Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa. Today is Friday, August 3rd, 2018, and this is our weekly Country Roads with our friend Winston Strout. And Winston's with us. How are you, Winston?
Well, doing pretty good. Just a little bit sleepy this morning, but we'll try to make our way through it. How about that?
I'm really sleepy. Trust me, I'm going to struggle to get through this one today. And it's Friday. Happy Friday, Winston.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's the end of the week, and this is our usual Country Roads time. And we're going to talk about, Winston's going to talk about getting back to like original issue and original jurisdiction, things of that nature, and also share a book that he wrote uh, called The Effects of King James Version, which we have talked about previously a little bit. We've at least made reference to how that applies to the kinds of topics that Winston discusses on the GoldFish Report. And but first, we're going to do a little news just for like a couple minutes because there's some interesting developments that have happened and I wanted to share them with our viewers. Right before I go to that, I just wanted to remind our viewers that there is a, I would say, counterfeit imposter GoldFish Report page on YouTube. I just wanted to reassure our viewers that if you want to find the GoldFish Report, I'm going to show you just where you can do that. And as soon as I get to that page, so just bear with me this morning because I'm a little bit tired myself. This is our website. Okay, what you're going to find on our website here is all the links to all the resources that we have. I know it looks a little bit busy. I am in the process of redesigning this so it's a little bit more user friendly. Here you can see this is our archive channel, so here's the link for that. Here's also where you can go to find the POTUS reports. The POTUS reports are published on YouTube, but they are uploaded unlisted, which means you can't do a search and find them. So you really have to have the link to do that. So this is where the POTUS reports are located if you want to access them on YouTube. But of course, they're also available on BitChute. Here is our PayPal donate button for viewers who want to donate and help to keep GoldFish Report going. There's also a Patreon page for viewers who want to be patrons and help support GoldFish Report that way as well. Here is also our Twitter feed. So you can see what's coming in the GoldFish Report Twitter. You can follow us here. It tells you could follow, just click that button right there and you can follow us on Twitter. Here is also our Facebook page. You can click here and follow us on Facebook as well. So right here is our BitChute channel. You can go to the GoldFish Report YouTube channel here. You can go to our blog from this link here, Canary Chronicles blog, which is also a sister blog, our GoldFish Report news page on Facebook, and of course the Canary Chronicles YouTube channel, which I actually haven't been updating because I already have two sites. I have so many sites to update as it is. Canary Chronicles is probably, going to be repurposed for something else probably. But anyway, folks, this is where you go to find our reports. We have transcripts from interviews. Just so you know, you go to the VIP docs. Winston, did that show up on the screen?
Yes, yes, it did.
Okay, this is where you go to find all the documents that we share on these Country Roads reports and some other reports that we do as well. And it's listed by the number. So if you are viewing one of our reports and you are looking for the documents that Winston's sharing, this is where you're going to find them. And they're listed by the report number, so you have no problem finding which one they reference to. So I hope that's going to be helpful to viewers. You can always go to www.thegoldfishreport.com, and this is where you'll find our authentic sites. Now, what I wanted to screen share really quick is something that came up yesterday in the news during the president's, or I should say prior to the president's, can you see that, Winston? Did that pull up too?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Prior to the president's uh, rally in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, there was a story. Funny, it was published the same day. Trump attack foiled. Oklahoma man drove here with loaded gun, police say. It's a little bit strange. Circumstances are very strange around this. This woman claims to have kind of inadvertently led this man to her and she reported him. But it's very strange. And let me explain why. We're going to go to the Q board. This is the did that also show up, Winston? Because
Yes.
sometimes they don't when I do this, so I appreciate you checking that. This woman was, at first Q thought this was legitimate, and they were requesting VIP access, which looks like it would have been granted, but it looks a little bit more like threats received. United States Secret Service acted appropriately. This is not a game, and this link here is going right here. Here we see, now we know why Q didn't post before the rally, because there was some Secret Service, there was a threat they were dealing with. So here on the Great Awakening, people are asking, the reason you did not see lots of Q signs this time, the Secret Service were taking them. And here they said, when Q supporters asked why they were being taken, the Secret Service said in a whisper, "Trust the plan." So I have to tell you, who is the greatest troll? Who is the greatest mainstream media troll that there ever is? And it is Donald Trump. It is him. It is the POTUS himself trolling the mainstream media, because here they made this big deal out of, let me see if I can find the post here. Can you
Yeah, it's okay. See
can you
it.
see this?
Hmm.
Okay. I just wanted to find one other post that I had that okay. So here's a post. Lisa Crowley posted this, and this is also from the Q page. And the person who was making the attempt on the president, or the woman, I can't tell which is which here, but it says, "I guess you can think of me as the female Seth Rich that knew she was being hunted and took steps to foil them before they could succeed." And then this person says, "I mean, short of killing the people who you want dead, how can you foil their plans to hunt you down?" So this is very strange. It looks like that this is she wanted to hug POTUS. She said she wanted to give him a big hug. Let me tell you something. This seems like, to me, maybe an MK Ultra target, trigger to assassinate the president. And this was a role that they were playing. So this was definitely a threat that came into the president. And that's why when he came out, he made an Academy Awards comment, because this was absolutely, it looks like it was a setup. Here, Lisa Crowley is saying was it the woman who was escorted out? Q t-shirt was used as bait, but the Secret Service did not fall for it. They were on top of this woman. And so was mainstream media hoping to film a 187, which is a code for murder, thus POTUS Academy Award comment. So something happened, something serious happened, and I just wanted to bring it to people's attention, because that was a potential assassination on our president. And then, of course, we have this drop here that says something big is about to drop. And I'm not going to go into all of this, but I just wanted to mention that, back to our Twitter page, the big thing that is about to drop, which I also posted. Let me see, where did it go? Sorry, I'm scrolling, folks, but this is the world we live in, so I can't really change that. Here it is. It was the United States Space Force, this new Space Force that has announced that something big is about to drop as well. So they're coordinating with the Q Post. T-minus 12 hours, the Boeing Starliner commercial crew astronauts will be revealed to the world. Who else too excited to sleep? So this is what's going to be announced, according to the Twitter for the United States Space Force. So, folks, this is lots of new stuff going on. Keep an eye on GoldFish Report on the news page, because we're going to have everything published there, so you can make sense of all this. But it looked like what happened was the Florida, the Tampa rally, where all those cute signs and t-shirts and everything, it was kind of the anomaly, where all of a sudden everybody in the mainstream media started talking about Q, calling it a conspiracy theory and all of this stuff. And of course you had people behind Jim Acosta chanting CNN sucks. And so, it was really interesting. We had Sarah Sanders respond to that. Folks, this is like, get the popcorn. I mean, really, you can't make this stuff up. So, without further ado, thanks for your patience, Winston. This is the world we live in, and it's many, many scenes. Final, so the curtain's closing. We open another curtain for another for another act. So, we'll take it from here. Just keep an eye on the Goldfish Port news page, and we'll keep our viewers posted on all the latest developments.
Yeah, well, just let me comment. Yeah, I do keep track of, all those things that go on. Um, you know, there's a lot of weird things happening, especially as we come up to these midterm elections. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
the Democratic Party, as it's called,
Mm.
is doing everything they can, and it appears they're doing everything absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
And again, like I say, these energy waves that are coming in, will either bring up the very, very worst in us, or they'll bring up the very best. And so, in some of these that have had, many of the commentators are talking about, the thrust of the position of the Democratic Party. They're all just laughing and saying, they're acting completely stupid, and they are, because these energies have come up, especially this new energy that came up through the Lionsgate portal, are bringing up craziness,
Yeah.
and it's obvious because a reasonable, rational politician would never do the things they're doing. I mean, it's completely ludicrous. If they're trying to win an election, why would they act the way that they act? Because they can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. This energy is pushing all this garbage and crap right up to the surface, and
Right.
they're bubbling it out. They're foaming at the mouth of all the foolishness that they've harbored,
Right.
and not just Democrats, but a lot of what they call rhinos or whatever.
Rhinos. You got that, Winston. That's right.
Yeah. So, like I say, for the benefit of our listeners,
Mm.
we need to calm down, go into a gentler, kinder modem. This, like I was telling you earlier, the last 2 or 3 reports I've done, I kind of got a little bit hard, uh, and I apologize for it, because it's not my nature to act that way.
Mm.
But what I thought we'd do today is do a little bit of reflection on some of the concepts and so forth. Because again, what will life be like
Mm.
when we get on the other side of these midterm elections? What will our life be like when we get on the other side of the SAR and all those kind of things? And I've made the comment, we've won the war.
Right.
Can we win the peace?
Mm.
And if we go into the peace acting like we have in the war,
Mm.
we're cutting ourselves short. That's the way I look at it. And so
Right.
perhaps to get a little bit better prepared for the peace,
Mm.
I thought today maybe we'd be just a little bit reflective and try to calm down the narrative just a bit.
That's good because I think also some of this energy is meant to try to push out any residual. Think about it. If we're going to a higher dimension, Winston, you want
Uh-huh.
to push out any residual negative
Yeah.
pattern or energy that or programming that we have. So now's the time to get it out because you can't bring it with you where you're going. If you're planning on going to a higher dimension, you can't bring it with you. So the
No.
thing is to purge it out now, and hopefully we can all survive that, and then and clear it. The whole
Yeah.
point is to clear it out of us and get us ready to.
Yeah. One of my kids one time, he told me, well, kids as they grow up, they have certain frustrations and stuff. And that's when we were living out in the desert. I said, look, I said, if you get to the point you just got to blow your top, I said, just go get a hammer or sledgehammer or whatever. I said, go out here in the desert someplace and just go pound on rocks.
Mm.
And he come back later on and told me, he said, yeah, he said, I took your advice. I said, it was good advice. He said, I took a hammer out there, started beating up on some rocks and pounding them, getting rid of my frustration and everything. He said, then I calmed down. He said, I got to looking at those rocks and I could see certain things. He said, so what I did, I took and rearranged all the rocks to make me a little living area. And so I could sit there and be at peace and calm. So sometimes, you just need to go out and, and physically
Right.
blow off steam. And that's what he did. But then after he blew off the steam, he got to looking around at the rocks he'd been pounding all that hammer. He said, if I arrange these rocks in a certain way, I can make myself a little living room right here,
Yeah.
and and sit and be at peace and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's sometimes you just got to blow off steam, and but do it where nobody's gonna
Get
be the
hurt.
victim of it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And then once you blown off the steam, look around at what you got. Look around at what you got, and you might find that what you had originally perceived to be just an absolutely impossible situation, it might turn into something where you can be peaceful and calm. And them rocks don't care if you beat on them. I mean, that's okay. I wouldn't go beating on trees because they're living things, But rocks don't care. Just go beat some rocks up. Anyway, like I say, being more of in a more reflective, uh, calm. We need to calm ourselves down a little bit. There is a lot of craziness going on. I talked to Gilliland the other day,
Yeah.
and the crazy stuff that goes on up there. I mean,
Jeez, I
he
can
had some guy
imagine.
come on the ranch up there threatening to kill him,
Oh my goodness.
and he immediately recognized the guy was possessed, and
Mm,
he told me that the lion beings came in and grabbed a hold of that guy,
mm,
and whatever was inside of him, whatever had attached to him, they got rid of it,
mm.
and the guy snapped out of it, and then he was just as peaceful and calm as he ever was. So sometimes, like I say, whether you have to go out in the desert and beat on rocks, or you have to have intervention,
Mhm.
from some other entity and so forth, be at peace and be calm. And I think people will be well served to do so. Like I say, I do. First thing I do when I get up in the morning, I turn on the internet and look at all the crazy things that are going on.
Isn't
And I
that
can only,
great? First thing in the morning. That's just, and I do the same
well,
thing. I know I do the same thing. It's a terrible habit, but you have to
I
you
want
have
to
to
see
find out
what's
what's going on.
developing.
Yeah,
I want to see what's
exactly.
developing, but I can only listen to that stuff for so long. Then I have to switch to something peaceful. Because, like I say, it's nothing but craziness, and it's not how people should be. I mean, when we start talking about loving your neighbors and doing all these kind of things, we don't see that. But there's a lot of hype, and it's on both sides.
Mhm.
It's on both sides, and so I like to look at some of the comments about the Q post and all that kind of stuff. There's one fellow I like a lot to listen to. I mean, I think he goes by the Praying Medic. Have
Yeah.
you listened to him?
Oh, he's very popular. His
Yeah, but he's very calm about it.
yeah.
Very calm, and he's very loving, and he prays. I mean, some of the stories he's told about his life and some of the things he's accomplished about healing people through prayer and through different things that he uses and stuff. So again, I mean, instead of listening to all the you know all the hype and stuff around it, if you want to
Mm.
study what some of the things that Q comes out with, I would suggest listening to Praying Medic because he's very calm about
Well, Winston, I know you also like how POTUS Report does this at the top of all of our reports as
it.
well, so I know you're not going to forget to mention that.
Well, like I say, there's a place and a time for everything. But my point is, that go inside a little bit, calm down, and I think you can get a better perspective on what's happening if you're calm. Because if you got adrenaline pumping, I mean, adrenaline was created for fight or flight. That's what it was created for. And so if you go into an adrenaline rush, you're either going to fight or you're going to flee, one of the two. Now, how can you analyze calmly a situation if you got an adrenaline rush going on? You have to be very careful of those things. So again, like I say, we need to maybe calm down a little bit, and because it'll be over with. It's going to be over with sooner or later. And then what will you do? You see what I mean? And so again, as we talk about all the drastic things that are happening, uh, think about how will I live in peace when it inevitably will come? It's inevitable. How will I live in that circumstance? Will I live like I'm presently acting and carrying on and stuff, or will I have to change? Because we're not going to do those kind of things anymore. We're just not going to. It's not going to happen. And all these assassination things that come up. That anybody in the right mind thinks some guy's going to carry a pistol into a rally and shoot Trump. That's pure foolishness. That ain't going to happen. I mean, a lot of people have forgotten. When General Dunford was put in as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, there was at least 2 assassination attempts made on him. He narrowly escaped both of them.
Yeah, what's sad about this is what I was reading, that article was this fella says he was having voices in his head telling him to go do these things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very...
CIA, it's called the CIA Voice of God.
Yeah, voice to skull technology. So it's part of that whole MK Ultra thing and all that, and they trigger people. So and it's sad. It's sad that the deep state, but that's because, folks, as I will quote Benjamin Fulford, there is an anti-life force on this planet.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and they don't like humans. They use us, they eat us, they traffic us, they farm us, they harvest us. And once you realize that, then you can stand up for yourself. But if you don't want to see that and don't want to acknowledge that, they'll continue to do it. So what Trump is here to do is to put a stop to all of that.
Okay. All right. What I would say Trump/military.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm just saying what he represents. Team
Yeah.
Trump,
Okay.
yeah, Team Trump or whatever. I mean, I'm not just saying one man isn't going to do it single-handedly. Not at all. You're right.
No, not at all.
Yep.
Yeah, it depends more upon the attitude of the people. I know we got a lot of people that are praying and meditating and so forth, for these things to happen. And without that, it'd be a much harder thing, for the Trump team to accomplish what they accomplished. So people should be, praying, meditating, have the very best intentions and hopes and all those kind of things. And that energy will carry the day. It's not Trump's business acumen that's going to carry the day. It's the thing that'll carry the day is the intention of the people.
Certainly.
And so we want to go into a little bit of that today. Just wanted to be a little bit reflective. I had written some time ago. I had written a book. When I write things, it's basically a conversation style, just like I was talking to somebody. Because, like I say, I'm not an author. I'm not trained in any of those kind of things. And so when I write something, it's basically in conversational type mode. So anyway, at one point, I had written this book here. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, the name, you have to hold it up a little bit higher to see the name. The effects of King James Version on commerce. Interesting. We did talk about this a little bit last time, so this is good that you have a book on that.
Yeah. Well, the chapters in the book, maybe I'll just screen share so people can see what the chapters are. I think I have it here. Is that up?
The directory is.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the chapters.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
And so, again, there's certain subjects that I thought would be interesting in this. And so what I'm going to do today is go over a couple of chapters. This one here about original sin and original issue. Then I'm going to flip down into this one here. So anyway, those are the chapters that you'll find in that particular book, and you can go onto the website if you care to have it and study it. It's not that expensive, and so anyway, some of those chapters and some of the points in those chapters, I thought today, tried to be a little bit more calm, a little bit more gentler in our approach. And I thought maybe we could review some of those things. Uh,
Right.
you know,
No, that sounds great, Winston. And also, I wanted to just mention to folks that this is really like a college level course. So if aren't interested in learning, then, you know, because someone it's presented as if information that you still need to do your own study and research on.
oh yeah,
This isn't the final solution. That's why it's like I say these are like college courses. I think we should be calling them, 101, 201, 301, so that we know what the topics are. Well, we do actually, because they're Goldfish report numbers. The number report today is 257. So this is college course 257 today. And I look at it that way because it still requires further study. There's still information not only that came before it, but information that needs to be that you can build on it, on top of it. So it's that kind of information.
yeah. And again, like I say, I mean, some of it's study, but what I do try to do is share some of my life's experiences that contribute to the subject matter. Like I say, I turned 70 years old. So I've had, so many different interesting things happen to me in my life that I like to share those things as they apply to the subject matter that we're talking about. And so, anyway, today I wanted to start out, then I'll have to go back to it. Uh, I want to start out with this one particular scripture. It's in the King James, 2 Thessalonians. Now, this again was written by Paul. And, uh, and Paul was teaching at a high school level, because if you really want to get the scoop, you would go to somebody like Peter or some of the other apostles that had spent about 3 years, let's say 3 years, in the presence. I mean, they hung around with him, they went fishing with him, they went all these different places with Jesus. So they were exposed to higher teaching. See, if you go back and look at what Jesus actually did, when he was teaching the multitudes, which was, kind of on a grade school kind of level, I mean, he would teach at that level to the general population. Then when he would take the apostles aside, he would teach them at a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually he took 3 of them up to the Mount of Transfiguration, and they saw things, that was, way up there in the PhD level, put it that way.
Yeah.
So again, when people look at the scriptures, I always remember who the audience is, and also remember who is giving the sermon. Now, again, this is Paul. Paul never had met Jesus in his life. I mean, he had a vision on, and saw a light and heard a voice, but it wasn't the same as, Peter and some of the others, who had spent time with him, sitting around the campfire or whatever you want to call it. But anyway, what Paul has to say, is very interesting. So I just wanted to refer to this one particular scripture here in 2 Thessalonians as it applies to me and you.
Okay.
To all of us. Anyway, it says, "For the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish. Because," now here's the reason why they're going to perish, "because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them strong delusion, that they would believe a lie.
Mhm.
Okay. So again, because they had not received the love of the truth, God. It don't say Satan. It said God shall send them strong delusion that they would believe a lie. All right, now this is an important concept for people. And so, we have truth seekers and all kinds of things, and we come upon truth, so forth. But Paul uses the word love of the truth.
Right.
Now, what the word love, I've seen it defined in the following manner, and that is love would indicate a strong desire to join with and to become one with. So, for instance, we say, we love our children, we love our parents, we love, this, that, and the other, and that love is really, our intense desire to be one with them, be one with our family, to be one with our friends. And so, in this case here, Paul's talking about a strong desire to take truth and to become one with it. And because some don't do that, it says that God would send them strong delusion that they would believe a lie.
Mm.
And so, we have this problem going on. And that is, like I say, I mean, we're on the information highway, and there's just, so much that goes on. For instance, it's well known. It's well known that that I think about 70% of the conspiracy theory type websites and information that comes out is put out by the CIA.
Oh yeah.
So,
That's
they estimated about 70% of the stuff you see on the internet, the
mm.
CIA put it out.
Oh, yep.
Oops. And that's why we've tried to encourage people, not to just take up one thing and go with it, but listen to what everybody has to say and then make a judgment in regards to it.
Exactly.
And
That's why
I,
when I do my when I do the POTUS review, I'm sorry, when I do the Q and on review on Mondays with Jim in the POTUS reports, I'm
mhm.
giving an overall summary. I'm kind of giving an overall how does this apply kind of thing, where you look at it, though you look at more of a big picture, because there are a lot of people giving a lot of their own analysis, and some may be right and some may be wrong, but at least people are trying, and at least it gives you a different perspective, so you can expand your thinking, as Q always says, expand your thinking.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's why, I've constantly, warned people about me.
Yeah.
And that is go and listen to what everybody has to say about these subjects. Don't
Yeah.
just don't hang your hat on Winston. I mean that is completely wrong. And so if I say something, you say, well, that makes good sense. Well, go listen to what other people say about the same thing. Am I a perfect man? Is everything that I say absolutely correct? And the answer is no. I would not purposefully send you a delusion, but am I completely correct in everything, as I see it? No. And so everybody's on their own responsibility. You're not grabbing on my coattails and going anywhere.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to take responsibility for themselves, but it only makes good sense
Mm.
that you listen to what everybody has, what different ones have to say about certain subjects and everything, because it don't,
Right.
it's just not right. It's just not right. You can't hang on my coattail.
Let me just screen share something real quick so I
Sure.
can explain what you just said. So if you take a better look at this, folks,
Uh-huh.
you have the Guardian, you have the Point, you have the Newsweek, you have Rolling Stone. These are all new. Of course, CNN, you have Vox, New York Times, and they're all saying the same thing. This shows to you that it's all scripted, folks. Who is QAnon explaining the internet conspiracy? QAnon, everyone had a QAnon story, okay? And they were all the same thing, saying that it's a conspiracy theory. And it was all in the same day. So don't think this is a coincidence, folks. It's not. It's all scripted. So I just wanted to share that, just to your point, because
Yeah.
now that's not what we're talking about in terms of getting a different perspective, because those mainstream media sources aren't going to give you a different perspective because they're all giving you the same thing. That's the whole point. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, but like I say, you listen to the different points of view,
Mm-hmm.
certainly for information, because like's been pointed out by several different ones. If you want to know what corruption exists, within a certain organization, listen to what they say about somebody else, because what they're really saying is, "This is what I'm doing." Reverse speech them, and
Oh yeah.
you'll find out what they're actually doing and what their attitude and
Yeah.
stuff is.
We do post that on the news page too. There's a person who we interviewed, Tiffany Fontenot, who does the reverse speech analysis along with David Oates, and we do post that on our news page, and it does reveal there's, not what you're expecting, true, and people that you're not thinking would
Yeah.
be surprising you as to really what's going on. But it's important to note that. Thanks for noting that, Winston.
Yeah, and then the admonition, from the scriptures, different ones, is don't be an accuser of the brethren. That's the term they use.
Uh-huh.
But when we start to accuse others, in essence, what we're doing, we're saying, if you truly analyze it, when we accuse others, what we're saying, this is what I'm guilty of.
Mm-hmm.
We do that. We constantly do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's impossible to discover a flaw in someone else unless we have that flaw within ourselves. And so the admonition, again, in scriptural
Right.
kind of connotation, they say, when you go to the judgment, don't be accusing anyone else, because all you're doing is revealing your innermost weaknesses and so forth. And this is something, again, that I've referred to this Joseph Smith fellow several times
Mm-hmm.
in our reports and stuff, but he made a statement, when he was talking to the people he was associated with. He said, don't be accusing one another. He said, if you don't accuse me, he said, I won't accuse you. And he said, if we have no accusers, then we can go to heaven together. See what I mean? So we have to be very careful about accusing others, of this or that, because the only thing we're doing, we're just revealing our own weaknesses. And so we have to be very careful of that. So anyway, again, getting on with this concept of delusion,
Mm-hmm.
for failure to join ourselves to the truth. I mean, the truth is out there. I mean, we had, what was it, the X-Files, that Mulder guy. He was always, always looking for the truth, always looking for the truth. And sometimes, and this, his counterpart, the devil's advocate Scully, they were always, going back and forth, because she was scientific. She said, here are the facts. Well, Mulder wasn't looking for the facts so much as he was looking for the truth. See, and so there's a little bit of difference there. So you see that interplay going on constantly with this, on these X-Files program. It's pretty good fun to watch them as they tried to work their way through some of the problems and stuff. But when he found the truth,
Mm-hmm.
the question, and when you find the truth is here for us. And so, but do we love the truth? In other words, have we joined ourselves with the truth? Or have you joined yourself with a lie? And, if you have not, as Paul says there in Thessalonians, he says, if you have not loved or joined yourself to the truth, he said God would send you a delusion so that you would believe a lie. Now, that's a fact.
Yeah.
That's just a fact, and somebody's going to say, well, that God guy, he's really a mean guy for doing that kind of thing. Well, okay, whether you think God's, a good guy or a bad guy, but here's what it is.
Right, but facts can also be false facts. So the
Well, of
facts
course,
don't always lead you to the
no.
truth. So you have to, this is where you really have to. Um, how do you find the truth then, Winston? If the facts can be, some of them can be fabricated. They might not even be true. But the truth, though, will always
Well,
eventually.
here's the answer. Here's right in this very scripture. Well, I think it's right here. Well,
Consume
anyway,
out of his mouth. So,
the it has to do with the Spirit of God that will bring you into truth.
right.
And we talked quite a bit about this in that allegory about the intervention of what they call Holy Ghost.
Right.
And so, people should seek, whatever truth they encounter, that they should seek the influence of the Holy Ghost, which has been brought to us by Mother and Father, to convince us that this fact, which is a truth, will elevate us
Mhm.
and make us more like them.
Right. So you're saying you gotta feel the truth. You'll know the truth in your heart, not necessarily your head.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
our heads can be confused and manipulated, and they are quite confused
Yeah,
and
we have
manipulated.
we have
But our
facts in our
hearts,
head. We
yeah.
have facts in our head. We have truth in our heart.
There you go. So that's where you go. You go to the Holy Spirit. You just ask them to reveal the truth, and you
Yeah.
listen. You listen with your heart, though, not with your head, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of times, either in theological discussions or other discussions, people will ask me, Winston, how do you know that?
Right.
I said, because it's in my heart.
Ah,
I know a certain thing, I know a certain fact to be true because of what my heart tells me. And so again, you can come to, and as we'll discuss here in a moment,
yeah.
uh, truth is not susceptible of proof. You can't prove anything to be true. Either you know it or you don't know it. And that comes out of your heart. It does not come out of your brain. And so again, this interchange between Scully and Moeller all the time. I used to love to watch that program because they would constantly be debating this issue. Is it going to be the brain? Or is it going to be the heart? Which one?
Right.
And so you had that constant interaction. It's good. I used to good programs. I used to like to watch
Yeah.
those programs all the time because they were fun to watch. But I saw that constant interchange
Right.
between the scientific mind
Hmm.
and then what the truth was, and even sometimes poor old Scully, at the end of the program, you could see that she was affected in her heart because she had a religious background, and aside from being a medical doctor and
Hmm.
being a scientist, every once in a while you'd see her, she'd be touched in her heart, and so now she wasn't going to admit
Hmm.
it. She wasn't going
Interesting.
to admit it, but you could see that she had a change of attitude away
Mm.
from the pure scientific
Right.
into some of these other things. So again, as a young person, I was always torn between the two things. That was I had a religious upbringing, studied uh, scriptures, studied the Spirit of God and all those kind of things. And then when I go to school, I have to take up the other religion, which was science. And the two at that point did
Right.
not seem to be able to join.
Hmm.
Now, at some point in our studies, we're going to have to join the spiritual with the scientific. So instead of having two religions out here competing with each other,
Right.
we're going to be able to join them into one religion. And so, but again, these are things we're working on, as
Right.
individuals, as society, and so forth.
Yeah, I think at a certain level, they are saying the same thing, but you have to brush off all the dust that accumulated on top of each one. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? To get
Uh-huh.
to the fundamentals of each, which really are talking about quantum
Yeah.
physics, and you can get to the spiritual and to the scientific when you have something that will bridge that gap. But then that means you have to throw a bunch of other things off, maybe some of the religious concepts, maybe some of the scientific concepts, or just and then get to the real fundamental foundations and principles of
Yeah. I was
original.
talking to a fellow the other day. He was a PhD psychologist, and we had gotten to talking about quantum and some of those kind of things, which he had no understanding of yet.
Mhm.
And so I said, well, our thoughts and so forth affect the collective consciousness. He had never conceived of that. I said, well, you've heard of the hundreds monkey, haven't you? He said he had never heard of it.
Mhm.
So I went back over that thing to demonstrate to him that the things that we do has an effect on collective consciousness. And so if we're putting good things into the collective consciousness, then we would expect that the whole, would rise. If
Mhm.
we're putting negativity into the collective consciousness, then things will lower down. And so that's one of the things we've worked on very hard, is to remove the reptilian, the archon influence, and so forth, so that the collective consciousness is not being polluted.
Right, but this is exactly how they, through thought form,
Yeah,
how they have manipulated humanity through the mainstream media to hold a certain vibration that they particularly feed on, that
yeah.
feeds them.
Uh-huh.
That's really what's been happening here, and so what you're saying is, I know this information's been kept from us deliberately,
Yeah.
so time for the apocalypse, the unveiling of the truth.
Yeah. Well, let's go into a few concepts here. Like I say, in this book, I had a couple of chapters here that I wanted to, just look at some of the concepts that I brought up in those chapters. So let's just go take a look at this one chapter here. Not that I'm in any kind of an authority on much of anything, but in this book, I wanted to bring up, uh, these concept of original. And so, this word original is a interesting word, origin. We're talking about creation. Where did everything come from? And so this is one of the mysteries that's baffled us for years. I talked to an old fellow one time. I used to love to talk to him. He was at the time I knew him. He's over 80 years old, and I would literally sit up all night long and talk to him.
Mhm.
I wanted to know what his 80 years had produced.
Mhm.
Because I was a young fellow then. I was in my 20s. I think I was, maybe 28 or 29 when I met him and talked to him and stuff. But I wanted to hear what 80 years
Mhm.
had produced. And so we'd set up, literally all night long talking so I could find those things out. But the reason I bring the story up was that he made a statement to me one time that made pretty good sense. And that was, over his 80 years, he and people he knew had constantly debated this concept of God. And he said the only mystery that we could never come to find out, what it was who was the first God. And so after 80 years of study and debate, and all kinds of things, he said the only mystery that we can never unravel was who was the first God, not who God was
Mhm.
or the levels of gods. All these things they understood,
Mhm.
but what he couldn't figure out was which was the first God, or nor was the origin. They could not get to the origin, and so he had not comprehended at that point uh, source. They had not come up with the concept of source. And so again, like I say, 80 years, I wanted to.
Sure.
So here I am now. Here I am now. I'm 70 years old, and and what have I experienced?
Right.
What contribution can I make
Right.
from 70 years worth?
Well,
That's
I
what I'm doing. Huh?
absolutely. I mean, look, Winston, this is why I really appreciate us doing these reports together because what the world needs right now is wisdom
Yeah,
more
it helps.
than anything else. Is
It
wisdom.
helps a little bit because, like I say, well, I can see into the future. I know what the eventual outcome will be.
Mm,
The only question that comes up is how will I or how will we get to that eventuality?
mm,
That's the only question.
mm,
And so, like I say, is for instance, just on current events, with the global reset and all this kind of, I know what it's going to be like, when these things are over with. But what I don't know is, the particular steps and circumstances that'll get us there. And so, as an educator, my purpose is to teach people correct principles that they would apply to get us to. And that's why I gotten over the last 2 or 3 reports, I've gotten just a little bit irritated, and stuff like that because I couldn't express.
mm.
I didn't feel like I was adequately expressing what it's going to take or what it does take to get to that eventuality. I keep hearing people, going on and on about global reset and currencies and all these kind of things. But and they basically have no idea, what it's going to take or what it does take. And I think I know a little bit about that. And so as I watch the politicians and the financial people and talk about this and talk about that, sometimes I just pull my hair out because I know that if they continue to apply the same untruths to try to get to the truth, we're not going to get there. And so, here I go again. I'm starting to get irritated. So I'm going to stop that. So
All
let's
right.
go a little.
Getting riled up, Winston. Come on, it's
I,
Friday.
I'll get riled up again, and then
Here we
I
go.
won't. I won't accomplish my purpose of trying to calm things down and so forth. So anyway, let's look at a few of
It's
the
the
things here.
energies. It's the energies. It's all right.
Yeah.
Get back
Let's,
on track.
yeah. Anyway, here's one of the things that has confused a lot of people. It's unfortunate. I know why this concept was generated. This concept of original sin. I mean, they try to go all the way back to the Garden of Eden,
Mhm.
and they try to equate sin or liability with what happened in the allegory of the Garden of Eden story. And again, it's oxymoron situation because again, we say that Adam and Eve were innocent. So if Adam and Eve were innocent, could they commit a sin? No.
No.
You can't create liability in innocence.
All right.
And that's the thing that's going to save, a lot of people in our modern times. They say, well, you did this, you signed the SS5 form, you did this, you did that.
Mm,
Well, it was done in innocence because the expectation of the people who participated in those things
mhm.
was for a different intent.
Right. Some
And
some
so,
might argue that it was an ignorance. So how would
yeah,
you respond to that?
I would say I would use the word innocence.
Okay, very good.
And so again, if we do something in innocence
Mhm.
with no evil intent,
Right.
would mercy apply?
I think so.
Yes, there you go. See, and so again, it's unfortunate that this theory
Hmm.
and false theory, by the way, as is being portrayed of original sin, became popular because by it becoming popular, then people would support it
Hmm.
and allow those who were perpetuating that lie to continue on. And now, so why would they perpetuate a false theory like original sin?
Well, it's a
To control
control.
the people.
To control. It's a control mechanism.
So if there's original sin, then they have to come to religious leader for forgiveness, which creates a liability. See, we've been over all this.
Yeah,
You know
crazy.
how they set this up, you know, with all these trusts and everything. Again, so anyway, this concept of original or the origin of sin have been perpetrated falsely to control people. Anyway, so you know, let me just look at some of the comments I made here. It says, "What does the word original conjure up into one's thought process? Generally, when we see the word original, we think of something that had not existed in that form before. And when we have analyzed the word create in former chapters, we have defined it more along the line of organize existing matter. That's what the word create comes from. I think it comes from the Hebrew word bara or baru or something like that. It doesn't mean to make something out of nothing.
Hmm.
It means to make something out of something, to organize it in such a way that it's much more useful. So when we talk about the creation of man, God simply come and took the existing elements, he organized them in such a way that he would have a functional entity that he could inject a soul into. So, for instance, you know, why didn't you pick a tree? Why didn't you pick a rock? Because they're not functional. You know, trees don't get up and walk around, rocks don't talk to each other, and all that kind of stuff. He had to create or organize something that was functional. And you know, and dogs and cats and all that kind of stuff do not function in the way that God had intended. So he could put a soul into them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So when God created mankind, he simply created something that was functional. I mean, just get right down to the thought process.
Okay.
All right. Now, I'll use this little example here. You being a Juilliard graduate, you would
I
understand this.
noticed your analogy there.
For instance, we might have a great composer who creates a symphony, but the composer still uses the exact same notes as are in Mary Had a Little Lamb. It's just that those same notes are organized in such a way that a particular melody is created beyond the level of nursery rhyme. See? And so again, you know, great composers, yourself included,
Thank you, Winston.
uh, uh, organize the notes in a pattern of harmony so that it's pleasing to people. It makes them feel good. They resonate with it, that kind of thing. You know, I've often tried to figure out who the guy was that created the keyboard on the piano. I don't, you know,
Christofori. His name was Christofori.
well, how do you figure all that stuff out? Because if you start off in middle C, you got C sharp, D sharp, E. Now, what's E sharp?
Well, there is something called
We,
an harmonic.
yeah,
It means that there's, well, almost every note. Well, the sharps and flats are enharmonic because it depends on what key you're in. If you're in a flat
yeah,
key, then they're flats. If they're sharp, then they're sharp. So they can, these notes in a different. It depends on how you organize the tonal. So what key you're in. So a key is a system of half tones and whole tones. So
yeah,
it's the way that they're organized, so your ear knows that you're in a particular key.
yeah. So
It's
in
like,
our Western
can't
culture,
really
we
get
go
me
by half
can't
tones.
ask me those questions.
If you go into other cultures, their music actually use quarter tones.
Yeah, so there's half steps, there's whole steps, and then there's quarter steps. There's also all kinds of tonality. You know, there's polytonality and everything too. And I have found though but that's not the conversation we're having right now. It's just that it is arranged at the very foundation of all music is a 1-4-5-1 structure, and I'll tell you what that is. It's a very basic syntax, which is
Yeah,
you have basically a subject, verb, and an object in some order so that
yeah.
you can understand it. So it doesn't matter what key you're in. It just
No,
means that you start at a tonic, which is a home key. You go someplace harmonically a little bit different, which is the dominant, and then you eventually come back to the tonic. And in Western music, that's how it works. But in other cultures, it's not.
that's right.
But it's relative to their language system, and that's
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
that's what I've said. Yes, through my linguistics and music, it's all relative to their language. Yeah.
yeah. And so again, from the Western perspective with our music scale, and then you go to some place, like in Southeast Asia, how can we reach harmony, in language and music and so forth? And sometimes it might be a little bit difficult because, again, Westerners do not deal in quarter tones. They just don't do it.
No, but harmony, is also like we also know that 440 is not is a bastardization
Yes, it is.
of
Uh-huh.
harmony of
Uh-huh.
the tone that concerts that an orchestra uses to tune. It should be 432. Um,
Yep.
yeah, so which if you see on the cymatics, if you look at a petri dish or a bowl of water and you have a frequency attached to it that's 440 and you have another one next to it that's 432, you actually get sacred geometry pattern in the 432. This is
Yep.
all over the internet. 440. So what has happened is our us as humans, there's discordant energies around us everywhere, and it's
Yes.
deliberate to keep
Yes.
us from harmonizing. So it creates discordant energies, not sonorant energies, but discordant.
That's
So,
why
and
I won't listen to electronic music.
yeah, well, it has to do with it has to do with the tonality, which is why a lot of people have problem with rap music.
Oh
Uh,
man,
it is it's discordant to many people, to your ear.
very much so.
Yeah, sure.
Very much so.
So,
Anyway, I just wanted to point that out as far as creation, and I knew you contribute because you have that good education in music and stuff.
thank
But again, when you sat down to compose a piece of music, you're using the exact same notes that the nursery rhymes use. You're just using them in a different order, in a different harmony. So again, when we start talking about the origin,
mm,
the original, that's why I was interested.
mm,
I would have to suppose that the keyboard on a piano is set up for convenience of fingering. For instance, you go from an E right straight to an F, so an F is actually E sharp if you use the half tone scale and stuff like that. But anyway, whoever that guy was that figured that
right.
out, he must have been
Well,
pretty damn smart.
well, in terms of the tonality, that's what I'm saying is that evolved from Gregorian chant. What happened was the church. This is an analogy for our history. This isn't just an analogy for music. The church controlled. You see, it's a rule generating system. It's
Uh-huh.
generative, like our languages. Music is generative, which is why you have almost endless numbers of compositions because there's in the Western music there's a theory. Okay, so there's rules to combining notes, but back in in the days of Gregorian chant, the church controlled everything, as you know, and of course
Yeah.
they still do behind the scenes more or less, but the church didn't allow for certain combinations of intervals of notes. So you had your Lydian, your Phrygian, you had different kinds of tonality at that time. And as time, went on, we had musical pioneers who would push the limits, and over time push it a little bit more, and over time, and that's really how we got our tonal system that we have today. But it wasn't always that way because it was always controlled. God, you couldn't have, a fourth interval on the piano was called Diabolos de Musica, so it was the devil in music. You couldn't have that tone, and you could not have parallel fifths because they were extremely pleasant. So they really, I would say, neutered music, but eventually, they couldn't keep it that way forever. And, the beautiful compositions that we have as a result of breaking out of those rules. That's why Beethoven and Mozart and Haydn and Bird and all these composers, they were rule breakers. They pushed the rules, they pushed the
Yep.
boundaries so that we could, but little at a time. It took hundreds of years to get these. And that's why they're classic, no matter what popular music's on the radio today, here today, gone tomorrow. These these are classics because they were also rule breakers at the time. They pushed the limits of what music was allowed to do at the time, and they created incredible masterpieces in doing so. And that's it's the same analogy for our history that we're in now. Everything's so tightly controlled that there's a limitation to our expression of how we can manifest. And so this is the example for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife's got a T-shirt, and it's got written on this T-shirt, it says "Break some rules."
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we would never have, the pastoral or the Ode to Joy if it wasn't for Beethoven breaking rules. Well, I would say they always found, especially Mozart, always found legal ways. Now, this is where Winston comes in. I'm equating Winston to Mozart here. Mozart always found, oh, I should say Bach, actually. Bach always found ways to break the rules.
Huh.
If you weren't allowed to go from one note to the next, he would put what was called a passing note in. So you couldn't jump that octave, but if you had a tiny passing note, which was very quick, you could get there. And so but the ear heard it that way. That's what's important, is that the way the ear hears it was important. And so that's how ultimately they were able to break the rules, was breaking them legally, though. And this is kind of an analogy, was that there were little legal loopholes, little legal, yeah, right. These are your rules, but you didn't say we couldn't do this, so you didn't say we couldn't
They
do
were
that.
creative.
Yes, that's the process of creativity, exactly. So I'm comparing Winston to Bach.
Well, I don't think you want to do that. But then after everything is said and done, then somebody like Dave Brubeck shows up, and you go to a brand new level.
Yeah, it's
Give me a Christmas. I used to just thrilled to listen to his music. Anyway, let's not get off on that.
Yeah, now we could talk about music forever. Exactly.
But think about the contribution you just made to the conversation. Right. That was excellent, and I appreciate that. Anyway, let's get on a little bit with some of this thought process here. I go into this one part here about native and nativity. This word native is used quite a bit, and it causes conflict because the use of the word as it's presently being used is used to divide people. I'm this, and you're not this.
Right.
You see, and so we're
native.
We're creating.
Right.
We're creating a division by the use of our words.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't approve of, because just look what it does. Either we're people or we're not.
Yeah, but political correctness has pushed this too far, and let me tell you, people have caved into this political correctness movement, which is really it's just a Trojan horse for demoralization and fascism.
Division.
All it is.
It creates division.
It's a Trojan horse, folks. Don't be fooled by political correctness. It's a Trojan horse.
Yeah, I know. That's why I like to joke about this term hillbilly, because it's not political. Anybody can be a hillbilly. I mean, really, when I make reference to hillbillies, I'm talking about just down-to-earth, practical people. That's all I'm talking about. I mean, there's no such thing. Really, there's no such thing as the Galactic Federation of Ascended Hillbillies. It's just for fun.
Yeah, we're just having fun with that.
But what I'm trying to point out, by making that, making that kind of fun stuff, is that, look, we're just people, and we're just, we're so serious about everything that goes on. So then somebody pops up, who's totally politically incorrect, talking about ascended hillbillies, for God's sakes. Anyway, we have a lot of fun with it, but I think my point's well taken. I think my point's well taken, because it's a spoof on the seriousness of all this political correct stuff. And I can get by with it because nobody has, politicized hillbillies, at least that I know of.
Every time, Winston.
It's just for fun. But when you start to laugh about that, then you can laugh about the other things that people have taken seriously. And so, we need to laugh at ourselves from time to time. Anyway, going on to this concept of native versus nativity and so forth. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you can look up the different definitions and stuff that you find. Uh, anyway, I'll make this point to refer to definition 8A, which is constituting the original substance or source. So when we start talking about native,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about, the definition I like to bring in on this conversation is constituting the original substance or source.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, and then talking about a nativity being the place of origin. So native is the origin, and the nativity is the place of the origin. And so again, what I'm doing in this conversation, this particular writing right here, is I'm taking a pot shot at the false concept of original sin. That's what I'm doing.
Yep.
So when we
That's a
consider,
Trojan horse too.
yeah,
Original
so,
sin is a Trojan horse too. Yeah.
oh yeah. So when we consider the matter, that matter cannot be destroyed according to our findings in physical science, but it can only be organized or reorganized. We're starting to get the idea that the things in our physical plane of existence always existed, and that we, as creators or co-creators, are simply taking what is already here and forming the world around us as we see fit. Now, you can choose to have children or not have children. You see, and so when we start to talk about original sin, original guilt, like there's something wrong with making babies.
Something wrong with being born, you mean? You're born a sinner, boy. It's going to be tough after that. It's
Well,
going to get tough.
when we do get into the higher dimensions, I mean,
Yeah.
I've read some reports that when we get, let's say, the fifth dimension or something like that, when we want to procreate and create another one of us, the procedure is different. And they still say, human forms, still have sex for entertainment or whatever. But when we want to make a baby, or reproduce after ourselves, we do it in a different manner. And that is, it starts out with creation of energy between the two individuals. They create the energy and then they form it into an entity.
Mm-hmm.
So it appears from the reports I've read that things are just a little bit different when we get into some of these higher dimensions and so forth.
Sure.
So anyway, it's just really, really interesting
Yeah,
as
no, but
we
you're
progress on.
questioning it, Winston, and that's what people have to do. I mean, how can the most joyous event of of a person's life, having a
Yeah.
child, how can that be, a sin? How can that child be born in sin? It just doesn't make any sense. If
No,
if if birth, if your
it's a
birth,
lie.
if your
It's a
birth
lie.
is a sin, man, we're in trouble. We are, and we have been in
Well,
trouble.
but again, it's for the purpose of control.
Yep.
So anyway, kind of go on down here, talking about, again, this is in that book. I'm using logic in the book
Mm-hmm.
to make these points and so forth.
Sure.
And then I go into, another kind of like a play on words. So I use the concept of original vulnerability.
Hmm.
For instance, a human baby is the most vulnerable baby on the planet. For instance, some of the animals, for instance, a turtle hatches out of its shell and goes right straight to the water, man. It don't take anybody to pick it up and carry it and put it there.
Right.
And a new colt, I mean, just as soon as it's, within moments of being born, it'll stand up and start nursing. But a human baby, you really have to nurture it and so forth. So again,
Mm-hmm.
it has to do with the complexity,
Mm-hmm.
the complexity of the offspring
Mm-hmm.
would indicate the level of possibilities with that entity. And so on this planet that
Sure.
we're on right now, the human offspring, the human baby, has the highest degree of vulnerability, which will also indicate the highest possibilities in the future. So I mean, it's just reflection. People
Right.
don't think about it in that manner and so forth. But I'm just trying to get people uh, having thinking a
Well,
little bit higher.
Well, it's amazing because they rely on that bonding, and
Yeah,
immediately you have to, that human baby has to rely on bonding, and ultimately, where that's going to lead is back to creators. Your desire to bond is bonding back to creator.
yeah,
I think that's really why we were born with that, and we can't survive without it, without that instinct to bond.
yeah. You go to some of these hospitals and stuff. Just as soon as a baby is born, the nurses take the baby away from the mother and say, "We're going to bring it back in a little while." Or they give the mother limited access to their own baby.
Right, while they're like shooting them up with
That
vitamin
is
K
so
and
stupid.
all these vaccinations and everything. Yeah.
I know. I mean,
We're worse. We're
but
worse.
with several of my children, they were home births,
Hmm.
and immediately the bonding started.
Sure.
Immediately, and that makes a big difference. It
Well,
really
the
makes a
bonding
big difference.
starts in utero too, though,
Oh
actually.
yeah,
But
but I'm just saying
especially
that.
once you make that transition, yeah.
Yeah, and so
Growth.
the possibilities created by the bonding and the nurturing are elevated rather than taking the baby off and putting it in an incubator or some glass box somewhere. People need to think about this. Let's see. Okay, now going again to the use of words.
Mm-hmm. Words.
Why is
Spells.
it that the first words a 2 year old say is no? Because that's what they've been taught.
No, 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 no.
Yeah. So parents, be careful about what words you teach your children because we get,
Yeah,
I mean, it's what's called the terrible twos.
yeah.
The 2 year old, their favorite word is no. Why is that? Because obviously you've demonstrated that it's the most popular word to use because they say, no, don't do that. No, don't do that. Now, how does that apply?
Mm-hmm.
How does that apply to this original concept, that's been perpetrated? See? And so, in other words, when parents tell the small ones that certain activities are a no-no, the young ones associate those things with bad or even evil connotations. And hence, many might conclude that procreation and associated results are dirty or evil.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, no, when we try to deal with our young people, we try to protect them, and then you put them into the public education system, and then they try to pollute them with what's called sex education.
Oh man,
Don't work.
get me started on that.
No, that's all I'm trying to tell you.
I know.
And so, as responsible parents, we try to bring children up to a certain level of understanding,
Hmm.
but we don't put sharp knives in the hands of children. We don't do that. That's totally irresponsible. And so again, but again, because of our language, no, no, don't do this, don't do that.
Well,
Therefore,
yeah, I hear you, Winston, but
well, we're all
sometimes they
guilty of
have
it.
to learn of dangers, though, and there's only
Yeah,
certain ways they have to learn of dangers. So they do have to have a healthy, but in terms of this, though, this is,
yeah. But my point is
sure,
because of the no word
right.
being associated with something that's dirty or evil, then it's easy enough for someone to fall into the false theory
Hmm.
that
That's
children
something
are born
good.
in sin, and consequently, mankind is sinful in its very nature.
Yeah,
See, so we kind of have to take a little bit of the responsibility as parents to ourselves
right.
for how we handle things.
Hmm. Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yeah,
My one of my daughter's first, really her first sentence was, "I want to go home."
Yeah.
I was like,
I
okay.
think several of us have said that.
Yeah, I wanted to go home. That was really her first sentence. And I'm like, okay, I'm just her Earth mother for now. I get it.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just common sense shows that responsible attempts at reproducing the human family are not sinful. On the contrary, are joyful. That's what we were trying to work
Yeah,
toward.
yeah,
Now, like I say, I like in this chapter here, I'm using a lot, kind of like a lot of play on words to get people's thoughts. Thinking about a few other different things. For instance, original innocence.
hmm
If we're talking about original sin, how about we talk about original innocence?
that's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, it has to be original innocence because, again, as we had talked about in some of our previous interviews with the prepaid account, the
Right.
lamb slain before the foundation of the world, the New Testament going into a trust with a trust asset where all sins are prepaid,
hmm
then trying to equate that to our modern system under House Joint Resolution 192, the birth certificate scenario, and all those things,
Right.
where all our debts are prepaid. So if that's the case, then we're entitled to mercy and grace. You see how it all fits together.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. So for those who haven't had a chance to review some of those things again,
Right.
go back and listen to some of those. Very
Right.
first GoldFish Country Road reports, and I think you'll have a pretty good idea of it. So again, in this chapter here, I go through the
Yeah.
concept of
Right.
uh, and like I say, I
Right.
write just like I talk.
hmm
I mean, I'm not gifted as a writer. I'm not particularly gifted as a speaker, but I try to put my thoughts into understandable language and sentences and so forth. And then again, equating some of our commercial thought process and so forth. Who has the claim on the original sin or debt, and who has the lien right on the liability? So again, these are just some of the elements and points that I bring up in these chapters and so forth. I am, I exist. See? And then again, going back, consequently, when studying commercial redemption concepts, I knew that I would have to go into another world, a higher dimension, so to speak. Again, like Paul, who was talking about a man who was taken into the third heaven. In other words, in order to understand, in order to comprehend these things. And this has served me well as I've incorporated metaphysics into commercial redemption. See, that's the first thing I looked at when I got any information at all about what's called commercial redemption. You have to understand it from a metaphysical point of view. If you try to simply to take the concepts in the physical world, you're not going to figure it out. You're not going to get it.
hmm
And so again, with some of these concepts, you have to go into a higher spiritual plane in order. You have to take yourself outside of the situation, remove yourself over to here, so you can look at it and determine how it is that you'll act when you're acting in that realm. And I think this is well demonstrated by some of our great minds. Certainly Einstein knew that. Einstein knew it. He said you can't fix a problem by using the same tools that cause the problem. So you got to get outside of it.
hmm
And this is what we have been trying to uh, encourage people, what we call loving detachment.
hmm
And that is you're in a situation, things are going on, emotions might be high or different things like that. So the recommendation is that you detach from the situation, get away from it, and then look at it analytically. So once you have made those analytical determinations from an outside the box point of view, then go back in and fix it. And that seems to be the very best way to handle some of those things. So anyway, going on about some. I mean, I don't want to hammer all this stuff to death, but again, you know, solutions in commerce is as much metaphysical as basically as you can get. basically as you can get. Now we get away from the circumstance, and then we look at it and say, okay, you know, what needs to be done to get this situation fixed, and then we get back into the situation and attempt to fix it that way. So, for instance, you know, one of the most interesting people that's been involved in this is this Roger Elvig fellow that I've talked about so many times in the past, and he is totally metaphysical. That's why I say I love to talk to him because he's just that way, you know. But you know, but metaphysics in a practical application. For instance, you know, people that study metaphysics, you know, and all this kind of stuff that goes on and everything. I've looked at some of that stuff in the past. I keep thinking, well, okay, so what? So what? I mean, how does that fix or how does that do anything in the world that I'm working with? In Roger's case, you know, he's looking at solutions to problems from a metaphysical point of view, and then he's going and applying it. I mean, like I say, that one story I told about him, you know, which I thought was so funny. He had gone in, Roger, he was on Social Security, and instead of them sending stuff into his bank account, they simply charged the charge card for him, you know, so he could spend his Social Security benefits. So he'd gone into Walmart to buy some groceries. I think it was, you know, $39 or $40. He got in there and his plastic card didn't work. They tried it 2 or 3 times and it just couldn't get the card to work. Okay, so that's a mechanical problem. That's a physical mechanical problem. It's electronic. Something was wrong with either the reader or the physical card itself. So the clerk said, "Do you have another method of payment?" And so Roger said, "Yeah, get your manager over here." The manager came over and said, "What's the problem?" They said, and so the manager tried to make the card work 2 or 3 times again, and the manager couldn't make it work. And so the manager said to Roger, "Do you have another form of payment?" So Roger's thinking, "Yeah." He said, "Charge it to the," I forgot what the exact phrase was. I have to go look it up again. He said, "Yeah." He said, just charge it to a customer satisfaction service." And believe it or not, there was a button on their computer, and they pushed that button, and it spit out a receipt for zero owed. Now Roger was proving once again that everything in the public is prepaid, and all that clerk had to do was push that button, and it came out zero liability. Now, how did Roger know to do that?
Good question.
How did Roger know how to do
Yeah.
that? And so again, sometimes you have to remove yourself from the mechanical problems that we face and so forth and think of another solution, because they asked him the right question. Do you have another form of payment? And he said, yeah. He said, discharge it to this customer satisfaction. They pushed a button. Sure enough, it worked. See what I mean? And so a lot of times, like I say, we become so involved. What would most people do? They wouldn't know what to do.
Right. They'd find either another form of payment or leave their groceries and walk out.
Leave the groceries and walk out. Yeah. So again, like I say, sometimes you just have to, you know, think through things. And if you studied, if you understand, because Roger perfectly knew about prepaid account, he knew everything about all that stuff, and so he came up with a solution that was agreeable to both parties. Is agreeable to him, is agreeable to the store. Bang. Now they brought the whole thing together, the trust collapsed, and there you go. See what I mean? So again, here's just another example. I'm not encouraging people to go to Walmart and do that. I'm just telling you that somebody who was capable of understanding the concept
and how to use it,
they solved the problem in an atypical way. But it's not because he hadn't put in the time he had put in, he knew it.
Mm-hmm.
Could he go back and do it the next time if he wanted? Sure, he could. Whatever he wanted to do. I'm just telling you, here's a circumstance that's based on knowledge. Now, when Roger would get into court with him, because he knew that he was involved in a fiction court, he would always ask the judge, do you have a claim against me? And the judge say, no,
Mm-hmm.
they don't. It's a fiction court. It's not a common law court we're dealing with. And so when Roger would be taken into a fictional court,
Mm-hmm.
his only question was,
Mm-hmm.
do you have a claim against me? Now, where does the word claim pop up? What jurisdiction? It pops up in the admiralty. And there would have to be, bills of lading and all kinds of different things in order to establish a claim. And of course, Roger knew they didn't have any such thing. So he just asked, do you have a claim against me? The judge said no. So Roger said, well, what are we doing here then? What's the purpose of us being here today? That kind of thing. And so again, sometimes you just have to think this. And so that's why I do in this book, is in my own way of thinking about things, I try to raise some of these issues at the very least so people can think about it. Now, this book here is not about technology, but it would stimulate people that they might want to look into the technology.
Mm-hmm. So this is like a very 101 level type course.
Actually, it's
201?
no, it's PhD.
Oh, this one here? So, but we started with this, so that's why I was saying you're right. It is, but I guess at the PhD level, because
Yeah.
they have to know this in order to progress.
No, but what I'm saying is this will stimulate that thought process at a level that we want people to progress to where they can produce the technology for the thought process.
Got it.
And so
that's why I thought it would need to go first.
Well, yeah, it could very well be a first primer if you don't use it as that, but it would stimulate somebody. See, again, I'm posing philosophical concepts and so forth that are PhD.
Right, exactly.
It's not that this book here is going to give you PhD technology, but the thought process that it would stimulate would cause someone to say, okay, how do I arrive at the same conclusion that Winston arrived at? What would make him think that? And if I think that way, what would it take for me to get to the point where I can think at that level? How can I get to the point where I can go into Walmart and if somebody says to me, do you have a different form of payment, that you can do a Roger thing? See? And so the concepts are PhD.
Sure.
The technology to get there is something that you have to work at. So this is kind of like, what do they call it, theoretical physics? This is theoretical commerce.
There you go.
Anyway, then I go into different, analysis of things. Like the word church, people say, well, I go to church. You don't go to church. You are the church, because the word church in the Bible comes from the Greek word ecclesia, which means a called out company or assembly. Wherever it is used in the Bible, it refers to people. A building is not a church. A church is people. We've become accustomed to using words incorrectly.
Yep.
And when we use them incorrectly, it causes a different concept. So is there such a thing as a Baptist church? Is there such a thing as a Mormon church or a Catholic church? No, there's not. That's a building.
There's a Catholic assembly or a Mormon assembly or a Baptist. Yeah.
Yeah, it's people. A church is people. That's why, like I say, some of these things then I go into history with, some of the things that happened and so forth in this chapter. Get into original issue, that we had talked about in that first GoldFish, Country Roads thing.
Yep.
And so again, like I say, it's good thought-provoking information.
Definitely.
That would cause someone to want to investigate
Mhm.
how could they arrive
Mhm.
at that same understanding? And so basically, that's what it is. So anyway, they go into free will and so forth. Anyway, that's pretty much what that chapter was about. Oh, there we go into remember the captain, Lieutenant Cowley and Captain Medina
Uh-huh.
interview you did. Yeah. So anyway, that's just kind of a short synopsis of that one particular chapter
Mhm.
that I would be wanting people to look at. Then I'll just refer to this other chapter that we had started out with. Again, going back to the concept that if we do not seek the truth and come to love the truth, which means that again, the word love,
Mhm.
we're not talking about emotion. We're not talking about animal magnetism. We're talking about a sincere desire to become one with the truth. And when we have that desire, it will overcome other problems. Because, like what Paul is emphasizing, that if you cannot reach that level, if you can't do that, then it says God would send you strong delusion so that you'd believe a lie. So anyway, again, this chapter here is kind of interesting for people to let's see. I may have highlighted some things here. Yeah, here's an important concept, and that is the first thing I learned about truth is that it is unsusceptible of proof. You can't prove something to be true. You can prove it to be false, but you cannot prove anything to be true.
Truth stands alone. Oh, it says it right there. It stands alone.
Yep.
There you
What
go.
that means is truth is independent, or it is created. It stands alone. You simply cannot prove something to be true. It just is or it's not, one of the two. And so you can't prove it. And so again, when I receive truth, when I join with truth, it's in my heart. And that's how I know something to be true. Because you can't prove it scientifically, you can't prove it with facts.
Well,
And
that's what they
again,
try to do in a courtroom, though. That's a problem there, isn't it?
exactly. You can't find truth in a courtroom. Get
No.
out of here.
Oh, get out of
No.
here. Listen to what I'm saying. Get out of here.
Anyway,
Yeah.
again, like I say, this writing I do is thought provoking at the very least. Let's see, oh yeah, I do have, okay, yeah, let me see real quick if I can get this up. It's something I think we've talked about in the past.
Mm,
Uh,
mm.
Maybe it's not in this chapter. It's not. Just give me if you don't just want to hold the recording for a minute and see if I can find it.
Sure, we'll put a little pause. Okay. So I think we found that really quickly. There you go.
Yeah, I wanted to we've talked about this in the past. But anyway, this is an article that was written by this. I think he was a heart surgeon,
Mhm.
and this article we've talked about this in the past. But anyway, what he was showing was, and Scott Werner referred to this in the past too, talking about the electromagnetic
Mhm.
energy, from heart cells versus any other cells. And he says the electromagnetic field, here it is right here.
Mhm.
The electromagnetic field is 5,000 times greater than the field produced by the brain.
The electromagnetic field of the heart.
Yeah, from the heart. It says heart energy can be measured with magnetometers 10 feet away from the body.
Mm,
See?
mhm.
And so again, when we start to talk about, you know, the realization of truth in the heart. When I know the truth, and when I project that truth to others,
Yeah.
from my heart, that energy that I'm creating from my heart is 5,000 times more powerful than what I would be projecting from my brain. And that's a very significant amount of energy, very significant amount of energy.
Sure. Sure.
And so when the different ones have said the most powerful energy in the universe is what? It's love.
Right.
We've had many people who know that it's love. And so when we get into all these other things, about all the craziness that's going on and whatnot, again, how do you insert into the collective consciousness the amount of energy that's necessary to carry the day? You insert into it your love energy, which is 5,000 times more powerful than what you would project with your brain alone. So when people are meditating, either individually or in groups,
Mm-hmm.
and you're producing love energy to insert into the collective consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
that's accessible by all people, you can see how important that is to insert that love energy into it. And again, what is love? It's an intense desire to join with and to become one with. If I say I love my wife, I love my child, I love humanity, I love this, what we're saying is that I have an intense desire to become one with. And when we take that element from our heart and inject it into the collective consciousness, that's what's causing the effect on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't the ETs, it's not the Lionsgate energy and all that kind of stuff coming through.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing it. We're doing it. And people should continue to do so. Because after everything is said and done, do you want, would you like to be the recipient of the benefits? Or do you want some ET over here to get all the benefits from all these things that are happening?
Well, this is why they use us as like batteries or
Yeah. Uh-huh.
batteries. Yeah, and so there's the dark occults who feed off of that
Yeah.
electromagnetics, that energy. But it's far more horrible than that. But I'm not going to get into it. So
Yeah.
I'm going to wrap things up soon.
Well, anyway, I just go through some of the, like I say, this is just, a 70-year-old reflecting on things that he learned. I just, a little play on words here
Mm-hmm.
with this concept here. Love and live
Mm-hmm.
have the same two consonants, L and V. Lama and Vav in the Hebrew. I'm not much of a linguist,
Mm-hmm.
but I noticed the same thing with the word evil. Evil is just the reverse of live.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just a little play on words to get people thinking,
Mm-hmm.
what does all this mean? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, but it gets people to thinking a little bit, about whatever. Then I go into a little bit of, truth and commerce and so forth. Talked about the maxims. We had that one interview. Went over a lot of the commercial maxims as they apply to the King James Version.
Right.
And I was trying to encourage people to come up to at least
Yeah.
the King James level in their moral ethics in regards to commerce. And I suggested that you're not going to go any higher than that unless you get to at least that level. So again, like I say, it's just good old practical, down to earth hillbilly logic, folks. I'm not a great mind, but I am a practical person, and so I try to reduce situations and solutions to certain situations in practical, down to earth terms and way to do stuff.
Now you do have a great mind, Winston. You really do. You shouldn't be. You're so humble, but it's okay. We know you're humble.
Well, but look, this is one of the concepts, and I really wish people would take a real close look at this. And this is the concept, and that is that 0 and infinity are the exact same value. 0 and infinity are the exact same value, and there's many ways that can be proven. Like I say, I did that one interview years ago with it was Albert Lammermont Weber. We love to listen to him. He has so many good interviews and everything. Anyway, for whatever his reason, he wanted to interview me on somebody else's recommendation, I guess. And so I was kind of toying. I knew he was an attorney, and so he has that way of looking at things, analytical. He's analytical. And so I was kind of playing with him, with some of the stuff. So I had him. I said count to 10 for me. And he started out 1, 2, 3. I said stop. I said start again. He said 1, 2, 3, 4. I said stop. I said, why did you start with 1 instead of 0? And he had to think about it for a minute.
Well, you did that to me too once, Winston, on one of our reports.
Well, that's exactly it. That's exactly my point.
I fell in the same thing.
We've been trained to avoid 0.
Ooh, sure.
And 0 is the most important numeral in our system. But we have been taught to avoid 0 value.
Jeez, what sheep we are.
That's why, it might sound like a radical thought to say that 0 and infinity are the exact same value, but it's right. It's true.
It is radical.
It's only radical until you learn how to count.
Yeah.
Because somebody one time, I was doing an interview with this one fella, and we were kind of getting run up on time. He had to end the interview pretty quick. And this concept of, I think who was he referring? Anyway, they were talking about derivatives. I think he was talking about David Icke or something, about derivatives and banking and all that kind of stuff. And so this interview was asking me, I'd really like to hear your views on derivatives. He said, but it would take too long to discuss it. And I said, no, well, I said, I can tell you what a derivative is in about 5 seconds. He said, really, what is it? And I said, a derivative is anything other than 0. Again, study 0, study infinity, and I think you'll draw the same conclusion that I have drawn, that they're exact same value. And sometimes when we want to do a certain operation, we create a negative 0 value now, don't we?
Yes, sometimes we do.
Sometimes we do that because we want to create antimatter. Now that's PhD stuff.
Yep. We'll leave that for another report, Winston.
but could we have accomplished that particular operation if I had not understand 0 and negative 0?
Nope.
And so, this is, I'm commenting on things that Louisa and I know about privately. Yeah. And so there's some things that we have done and I had to incorporate a negative zero to create the antimatter to cause the reversals. And
Brilliant.
so
That's brilliant. That's why I compared you to Bach. Come on, you're breaking the rules here, thinking outside the box. Hey, you're among really, really, it's quite honorable. It's really, actually, it
well,
is.
that's what grandmasters do.
I know. We're still waiting. Folks, we haven't gotten up to that, back to our original, our subscriber level that we lost when YouTube deleted our channel. Oh, it does happen to do something with YouTube, doesn't it? And and it's and we're still waiting. Winston's not going to do Hambone until we get back up to 12,000. So come on, get everybody to subscribe to Goldfish Report.
Well,
I want to see Winston do
maybe
his Hambone.
maybe I'll break down if it gets up high enough. But it's just for fun. A lot of people know how to do ham bone. Apparently not you, but anyway, it's
No,
just a little teaser for folks.
I don't know how to use screws and washers either.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. Anyway, again, going through this chapter here, like I say, again, to operate in truth leads one into unlimited commercial liability, unlimited commercial responsibility. And when we can't have the truth or the truth is unavailable, then we fall into limited liability. See again, a study of full liability versus limited liability will help you to understand what has happened to corrupt our commercial system. Because as people, we should be operating with full liability.
Right.
See, the maxim is whoever creates the liability has to bring the remedy. And so then when you get into insurance, as it were, with limited liability, I mean, maybe the next time I'll go over concepts of limited liability because it's led us to the problems that we're experiencing.
Yeah, that would be good.
And again, when we go into this new paradigm that we're going into, what I'm suggesting is don't drag limited liability into our new system. And most people, if you said limited liability to 99% of the people, they'd scratch their head and say, what are you talking about? Even though they're participating in it day by day.
Right.
Anyway, again, back to the delusion. So we're kind of up on time here and everything. And again, like I say, today more than anything else, I wanted to, calm down a little bit. I almost lost it a couple of times.
Yeah, you were struggling with that.
I was trying to calm down a little bit, and perhaps, like I say, so many things we're involved in are frantic. We're frantically doing this. We're frantically doing this. We wake up in the morning, we frantically turn on our computer to see what happened last night when I was asleep. And that might be counterproductive. So sometimes we simply have to slow down a little bit and evaluate the way that we think and the direction our heart is going in so that we can have the best effect for the highest and best good, like what James Gilliland always says, the highest and best good. Right. So again, we're talking about equity when we talk about highest and best good. So I just wanted to, maybe, calm down a little bit, see if I can get myself calmed down. And, for those that listen to these reports, let's just all calm down a little bit and let things flow. I think that's what I want to say today.
Yeah, thanks, Winston. And again, like I said, I think right now the world needs wisdom more than almost anything else except to calm down. And with the wisdom, hopefully you can calm down with the wisdom. So, this is the whole point. And we're so grateful that you share your wisdom with us because we have to little by little grasp these concepts, and they're not something you teach in graduate school, trust me. Maybe higher level, but even
what I would suggest to you, Louise, is that you ought to prepare a presentation on the theory of music. I mean, I enjoyed ever so much your comments and your explanations of how those things work. You ought to think about for calm people down a little bit,
Calm
because
people down.
again, we're out here listening to all this electronic music. I don't listen to radio, and I very seldom even listen to CDs or anything like that, because I know that it's bad frequencies.
Right.
Now, when I sit down and tune up my guitar, I don't use one of those little
Hmm.
things,
Hmm.
because they're not tuned to natural harmonies. And so when I sit down and tune my guitar, if I take it over my friend's house who does the same thing, when we sit down and play, we find out we're right in tune without using any mechanical thing to tune our instruments with. And so, again, I think that you would be well served to prepare a presentation on harmonics and music and some of those things that you're well trained and talented in. That would have a good effect. Like I say, GoldFish report and QAnons and Jim Fetzer and all of us crazy guys. I think you have something to contribute to people that would really be appreciated. I mean, I'd like to hear it. I mean, like I say, I just know 3 chords, and that's about as far as I get. And I don't understand what's behind it. And so you might want to think about putting on a little discussion. I think people would appreciate it, to be perfectly honest. I would.
Well, in due time. Thanks, Winston. I appreciate that. And in due time, I probably will, probably with Steve, who is also a musician,
Yeah, yeah,
my
yeah.
co-host, my other
You
co-host.
guys know all that stuff. The rest of us dummies, man. Like I say, 3 chords about as far as I can get.
Well, I'll tell you, I would have probably done something, but it's just that, I have so many other programs to get out, and maybe eventually I'll get to that. So it'll be good. Thank you.
Go into your heart.
Hmm. Yeah. Our minds are just computers, so they're not really meant to answer all questions. They're not meant to give you all the answers, your mind. It's there to help guide you, but your heart is really where, your answers will come
Yeah, let's get on to the other side of this. Why don't you talk to Steve and you guys put together a production to present to people? I think it would be ever so much appreciated. I
Well,
think it really would.
being the perfectionist that we are with
No, geez,
music.
don't start
No,
that stuff.
no,
Bring it from your heart.
I know I wrote two pieces of music for Steve
I
to
know.
sing. The problem is we, are on opposite sides of the world most of the time, and it's very difficult getting together to record them. And, so and there's, even other issues too, just time for me in terms of getting all the notation out properly. So I had a computer with the software on it that would help, and then it was uninstalled by a vindictive person, and I won't name names. So it became, I lost all my scores when that happened. So,
Well,
that's the loss of time.
the scores came from your heart. Your heart you still have control of your heart.
Yeah, no, no, no. They're in my head too.
You can
Trust me.
reproduce anything that was
Yeah.
on your computer.
Yeah, but that takes time, which I don't have these days. I'm so busy with GoldFish Report.
That's what I'm saying.
I know.
If I could reach through this computer, grab you and tweak your nose, I think you'd
I
pay
know.
more attention to what I'm saying.
I hear you. I hear you. I'll get to that.
Yeah,
And
we need it.
yeah, I hear you. All right. I'll make it. Rob Potter's upset with me because I didn't get this done in time for his Forgiveness with Love conference at Mount Shasta, and this was inspired. One of the songs was inspired by, not necessarily inspired. It was a poem given by Valiant Thor. It was not a poem, a prayer, a meditation. So I wrote the music for that, and it's really, really beautiful. But it didn't come together in time. There were things that
Well, why didn't Val write the music score for it?
because he was waiting for me to do it. That's the answer.
Well,
Okay.
Rob's got nothing to blame you for. If Val wanted that to put the music, he could have very well done it himself. But what I'm saying is, yeah, we're all under time constraints and all these kind of
Yeah.
things. But let's start thinking about what the future looks like. Are we going when we get on the other side of this? Are we going to have these kind of conversations? Uh-uh.
No, we
I'm
should.
not talking about this stuff anymore. Don't
No,
need to.
yeah. I know. I
It's
don't.
part of the past, and we'll leave
I
it back there. Then we're going to talk about things to move forward with.
I agree with
Right
you.
now, I'm just bringing up technologies and thought
Right.
processes that would help us move forward.
Bridge the gap.
But once we get past that point, all
Right.
this stuff stays over here.
Yeah, but the knowledge, the wisdom we gained from it, we need to take. We don't need
Yeah.
to use it as much as we need to understand it, as you said, so that we don't repeat it.
Yeah.
Because
That's
those
it.
are those are yeah how we got into this mess. Okay, well, Winston, it was good to see you. Thank you. I hope you have a great weekend. It's Friday, and it's just another week going by. We don't know what to expect for next week. We're going
Yeah.
to have some interesting announcements, maybe, according to Q. We'll have this announcement of this astronaut force that we're going to have in
No.
Space Force. Who knows? It's just a
Geez.
different version of the secret space program, I guess.
No, they're just announcing it. That's all they're doing. They're not creating anything. It's already there. They're just going to announce it or parts of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, exactly. So we
Randy's already announced it.
yeah, I know. And so many people like on Project Camelot who have come forward, like
Oh
Scott
yeah.
McClellan, and talked about we have bases on Mars, on the moon. It's all over the galaxy. It's, you know, they're
Yeah.
just keeping us stupid and dumb because they live off of us. That's why. But not any longer. We're going to all wake up, and what we're going to do is just stand up for ourselves, and we won't be used anymore, and we'll
Hopefully.
we'll be the recipients of our own energy instead of giving it to someone else. So
Yeah, we got to win the peace.
win the peace, and that's it. So thanks, Winston. We'll see everybody next week. These archives, day by day, are getting up and getting restored. Also, just remember that you can go to our website to find our links, to find our videos, wherever you would like to view them, on BitChute or on YouTube. And always look for us on Twitter. There's sometimes news stories that I post on Twitter that I don't post on the Facebook page, and vice versa. So, aside from our interviews, you also know that we have our news page. So that's a very important resource for people. So you can really cut through, which is what we do. We edit through all of the mainstream media narrative BS, and we just bring the stories as research media. We bring research. We bring research stories to the viewers that we think are thought provoking enough for you to consider. But always use your own discernment. So, Winston, thank you. Have a nice weekend, and I'll see you next week
Okay. Well, good luck to everybody.
for another edition of Country Roads. And have a nice weekend to all our viewers. And this concludes this edition of the GoldFish Report.